What is happening, baby? Welcome back to the Huddle Chat Sports Network's very own Fantasy Football Huddle, presented by DanklyfeBrand. Let's talk sports and shank it golf brand. We're getting kicked off right this NFL fantasy football season. We have finally made it, ladies and gentlemen. We are finally in the last few days, the countdown to week 1 of your fantasy football season. So right now, we're getting in to those players that are kind of on your fringe. Do I start them? Do I sit them? We're doing our week 1 startums and sit-ems right here, right now. So fill up your cup, roll something up, and let's get right into the news as we talk about our very first stardom player, not only of week 1, but of the 2023 fantasy football season. Of course, we're going to start at the quarterback like we like to do. And the quarterback on my start of the week this week is going to be Jared Goff versus Kansas City. If you found yourself going late on quarterback like I did in some of my leagues, if you find yourself looking at that streaming quarterback options, Jared Goff is a really tantalizing option this week. It should be an extremely high-scoring game, Detroit versus Kansas City, and Jared Goff is going to have to throw a lot to keep the Lions competitive in this game. Let's all look at what the Chiefs defense likes to do typically. We all know they typically like to start out slow. Look at what they did last year against teams like the Indianapolis Colts in the beginning of the season, where they really just were not playing like the Chiefs, and their defense almost lost them and did lose them a couple of games at the beginning of the year. So I think that Jared Goff is going to have a decent game. He's going to be looking at close to 300 yards, if not over 300 yards. Then you're going to have the touchdown opportunities as well. I like Jared Goff a lot this week. I'm also a big fan of starting Kirk Cousins, and I'm also a big fan of starting Geno Smith. Those are just a couple extra stardoms for you at the quarterback position. A sit-em quarterback that I want to avoid this week, it's going to be Russell Wilson versus Las Vegas. The Raiders, you would expect Russell Wilson to be good in this game. However, you're looking at him already coming into week 1 with tons of injuries in his wide receiver room. And he hasn't really shown us much in the preseason that you can really build off of as far as him changing drastically from last season. And honestly, I'm going to really need to see some hard evidence from Sean Payton, Russell Wilson, and the Denver Broncos before I really believe in any single piece of that Denver Broncos this year. So I'm staying away from Russell Wilson. I'm also staying away from Matt Stafford this week. And I'm also going to be staying away from Daniel Jones Sunday Night Football against the Dallas Cowboys. Moving on into the running back position, my start of the week for running backs is going to be Cam Akers versus Seattle. Seattle Seahawks allowed the 4th most fantasy points per games to running backs in 2022. There's going to be tons of volume opportunity for Cam Akers in this game. There's a big chance that we do not see Cooper Kupp in week 1. He's had 2 hamstring pulls before the season has even started. He's in Minnesota right now looking at a specialist. So there's a big chance we don't see Cooper Kupp week 1. Now, when you look at what Cam Akers did last season without Cooper Kupp in the lineup, there was 8 games in that sample size that we have where Cam Akers played and Cooper Kupp didn't. He had an average of 14.7 fantasy points per game in a PPR standpoint. He doubled his rushing attempts and tripled his rushing yards in games that Cooper Kupp was not there. He's more of the focal point of the offense without Cooper Kupp being there, and he's going to get a ton of volume. So I'm all in on Cam Akers this week. I'm going to be staying away from DeAndre Swift, though, against New England. New England did allow the 5th fewest points per game to running backs in 2022. And you may really think that you know what's going to be happening with this Philadelphia Eagles running back backfield, but experts don't know. I don't know. And I have no idea if it's going to be DeAndre Swift, Rashad Penny, if Kenneth Gainwell is going to have big games, if Boston Scott is going to play a role. I have no clue what's going on in that Philadelphia backfield. But here's what we do know. No team threw it to the running back position fewer than the Philadelphia Eagles did last year. DeAndre Swift, over his career, has scored over 50% of his fantasy football points through the air. And throughout his career, less than 5% of the time has DeAndre Swift had the availability and the ability to give a team more than 15 rushing touches a game. And that's what the Eagles are going to be looking for from DeAndre Swift. So I really don't have a ton of confidence. I don't like the matchup, so I'm staying away from DeAndre this week. Moving on into the pass catchers, looking at the wide receiver role here in week 1, I'm all in on Jahan Dotson from the Washington Commanders. I think that Washington, Arizona is probably one of the least interesting matchups to really focus on this week. But you look at the fact that Terry McLaurin with the turf toe, if he's not out, he's going to be limited this week coming into this. Jahan Dotson, I think, is the best wide receiver on this team, and he's going to have the chance to show out with Terry McLaurin perhaps not being there. Terry McLaurin being there might even help him out if Terry McLaurin is there as a decoy, because he's probably going to be limited in a very big way in week one coming fresh off that turf toe designation. I like Jahan Dotson. He's going to have some questionable quarterback play. It may not be a high-scoring game, but you have a high floor when you look at Jahan Dotson. Wide receiver one that I'm staying away from this week, though, is going to be DeAndre Hopkins from Tennessee. Look, we all know that he's a good wide receiver. He's one of the elite wide receivers, and we don't know if his elite wide receiver days are behind him. I think that all this talk that everybody's saying where Tennessee is where old wide receivers go to die, we don't know if that's going to count towards D-Hop yet or not. But what we do know is that the Tennessee Titans have a very low efficiency pass offense. They're a very run heavy offense, and they're not going to be giving a ton of volume to Ryan Tannehill in his arm. You're looking at the Tennessee Titans and their matchup. It's not looking to be a very high scoring game, and it's not looking like Ryan Tannehill is going to need to show out more than what he ever has to do. This is Derrick Henry's offense, Derrick Henry's team, and DeAndre Hopkins, Ryan Tannehill are only there to help when Derrick Henry needs it. I'm staying away from D-Hop this week. I just don't like the matchup. I don't like what Ryan Tannehill is going to do in this offense this week, so I'm staying away from DeAndre Hopkins. Tight ends that I'm liking this week. If you find yourself struggling in the tight end position, most of the tight ends right now, you either drafted him and you're going to start him, or you really messed up and forgot to draft a tight end, or you drafted a tight end you don't believe very well in. Tight end that I would love to take a chance on this week is going to be Jake Ferguson from the Dallas Cowboys. You're looking at what Dak Prescott has done with his tight end position throughout his career. He loves to throw to the tight end. With Dalton Schultz now out of town, I don't like Dalton Schultz. I think what Dalton Schultz did with the Dallas Cowboys was more of the scheme of the Dallas Cowboys rather than Dalton Schultz being a good athlete or a good tight end. You also look at what Mike McCarthy and how he coached the offense in Green Bay. He always loved that tight end, no matter if it was a good tight end or a below average tight end. I think Jake Ferguson steps into that Dalton Schultz role and plays really well. You see Dak Prescott loves throwing it to his tight ends. And I of course, Sunday Night Football, we all know the Dallas Cowboys love to show out at least 75% of the time on Sunday Night Football when we have to watch them those 7 Sunday Night Football games a year. That's going to do it for the starting tight ends. Sit-em tight end this week. I'm going to stay away from Evan Ingram from the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're playing the Indianapolis Colts, and when you look at the Colts defense, even when it was at its absolute worst, they were not a team to start a tight end against. The Indianapolis Colts allow on average less than 4 receptions a game to the tight end position. I don't think that this is a game that's going to be crazy high scoring, that Jacksonville is going to need to have T-Law throw a ton of points in. T-Law, I think, of course, gets the start, but I'm staying away from Evan Ingram. I don't think that the ceiling is that high for Evan Ingram this week, and I think the floor is extremely low. So I'm staying away from Evan Ingram in Jacksonville. That's going to do it for week 1's startums and sit-ems for the 2023 NFL season. Thank y'all so much for spending your time with me, and hopefully we can help y'all hoist that fantasy football trophy this season. That's going to be it for me today. Make sure y'all always keep your chin up and your attitude down, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace out, baby.